All right, everybody, let's get started. We've got a great show for you today. I'm super excited about it. Hope you are too. Welcome to the Lunchtime Discovery Series. My name is Chris Smith. I am your host most Wednesdays for this program. It's good to be with you all. Listen, I am so very excited about today's program. It's going to be fantastic. We've got two amazing people on the program today, bringing one of the most spectacular natural happenings across the eastern U.S. right now that we're going to talk about. We're going to get into it. The Lunchtime Discovery Series is brought to you, though, by the folks in the Office of Environmental Education within the Department of Environmental Quality and broadcast by us here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And I love it when this program can be just so timely and so effective as to you could, wherever you're watching this program right now, you should just like crack a window nearby. That way, maybe you will hear the sounds of spring and summer that are going to be wafting through North Carolina right now because, well, there's no way you've not heard about it. It's cicada season. And this year, the Eastern US is due for just a spectacular treat of these rare broods coming together. I don't know all of the right ways to talk about it, but look, we've got really smart people here in North Carolina who do know a lot about it, and they happen to be friends of the show, faces and voices that you will recognize if you've been tuning into this program for just about any length of time. And to learn more and get into what's happening here in North Carolina as it revolves these periodical cicadas, let me introduce you to today's guest because I want to learn as much as I can. I want to give them lots of time. You're going to be hearing from two people today. First up is Dr. Matt Bertone. Dr. Bertone is the director and diagnostic entomologist for the North Carolina State University Plant Disease and Insect Clinic. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Glad you could be here. One of the people in North Carolina that knows the most about every insect, I think, all the arthropods. Matt knows them all personally, even. And
I'm
then
still making friends, but yeah.
still making friends. And then we're also going to be hearing from Dr. Kelly Oten. Dr. Oten is an assistant professor and extension specialist with the Department of Forestry and Environmental Resources at NC State as well. Hey, Kelly, thanks for being here.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Y'all might remember Dr. Oden from not too long ago when she was here presenting on invasive species in our forests, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been on a few times. All the invasives, sign me up.
Perfect stuff. Well, obviously, y'all, we've got two brilliant entomologists on deck today, so I'm excited to learn more and hear what they've got to say. Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Make sure you all can see that. Let's see. Let's see. Actually, sorry. Let me do this real quick again. Let me make sure we got the sound good. Okay. I think we got this. All right. So let me know if you can see that, Chris.
Yes, looks good.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Today I'm happy to be presenting with Dr. Kelly Oten on cicadas. So we are going to talk about periodical cicadas and the rare double brood event, but we're also going to introduce cicadas in general and talk about them in detail, and especially focusing on North Carolina. So first, of course, we have to say what are cicadas. You know, these are true bugs in the order Hemiptera. That means they have sucking mouth parts. They're kind of related to aphids and some plant hoppers and leaf hoppers and things like that. And they are in the family Cicadidae, but there's actually another family, the Tedigarctidae, that exists in Australia. There's only 2 species of that family. All the rest of the over 3,000 species of cicadas found in the world are in the family Cicadidae. And they only feed on plant fluids, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And I just am highlighting this one I found in our collection while I was photographing another cicada for a colleague. And this minute metallic blue one is from China and is just very charismatic. So they are a very diverse group. And hopefully you're going to see some of that diversity and then learn about our local species during this talk. So how do you identify cicadas? So they're generally medium to large insects, about 1 to 3 inches. They are unique among Hemiptera in that they have three large, simple eyes, these ocelli here, in this triangle in the front of the head. And they have these hair-like antennae. They're very fine, small antennae. They do have this very large face and eyes, this enlarged front legs. They don't jump, and they use this enlarged face actually houses muscles that allow them to suck plant sap. The wings are usually clear, although sometimes they're patterned and they have very thick wing veins, and they do come in various colors. And just to highlight that, here is a tropical species from Southeast Asia. You can see how beautiful it is. It does have actually patterned wings and some nice color patterns on it as well. So there's a huge variety of cicadas out there across the world, coming in different sizes, shapes, and colors. But for the most part, they look like a cicada. So, what do cicadas do? So as far as the biology and the life cycle, most have a multi-year life cycle that's spent largely underground. So it seems to be fairly rare that it only takes a year for them to develop. Most, it's 2 or more years to develop. Once they emerge, the adults find each other through calling, and we'll talk about that in a minute too, and then mate. And the females then use a long blade-like ovipositor to drill into twigs where they lay their eggs. Then these nymphs will hatch and drop to the ground, where they'll dig and tap into some roots. And so if you want to see what that looks like, here are some cicada eggs. And you can see the frayed twig here where the cicadas were sawing into there, inserting these eggs. And then out from these eggs, after the adults have kind of are winding down and the young have developed enough to hatch, you'll get this little tiny pale cicada crawling out of the branch and dropping to the ground, where it will then dig underground and find a root to tap into. So they tap into the roots of woody plants, especially trees, and they feed on this nutrient-poor xylem fluid, which means they're slow growing. So it doesn't have a lot of nutrients for them to quickly grow. And they think that the tree cycle is what signals the passage of time for these cicadas. So one question is with these periodical cicadas, we're going to talk about how long they're in the ground. How do they know when to come up? Well, part of it could be, and how many years how do they count the years? They think that it's the natural cycles of the tree sap flowing up and down the tree. Then when they're ready to emerge, they've grown enough that they're big. They've got these front legs that they can dig with. They're going to dig out of the ground, sometimes creating mud turrets. And then they'll climb to nearby surfaces and molt into an adult. And so just to show you some pictures, so where people in North Carolina right now are going to start seeing lots of holes in the ground, these very large holes, of course, cicadas being large insects, are going to be coming out of the ground. And in the tropics, in some areas, they actually create these mud turrets. So they build up a stack of mud, somewhat like crayfish and some other animals do, and they will use this to emerge out of the ground. I'm actually not sure exactly what the purpose of it is. Maybe in the tropics, there's more predators on the ground, and so they're trying to get away from them because they are kind of slow once they emerge from the ground. And again, they're going to be looking for that surface to climb up on. And after they climb up on the surface, they are going to sprout out of this old nymphal skin. And so this was very early in my career. I was brought a nymph. It was actually on that previous slide by my predecessor, Dave Steffen. And he brought me this nymph. It was just about to pop. And so I put it on a piece of wood on my desk, and it climbed up. And once it stopped, it started to split. You see the adult then starting to emerge out, and as it kind of comes out, it leaves back to the lining of its tracheae, those breathing tubes. The wings are real shriveled up at first, and as they come out more, the wings begin to expand with fluid pressure from the hemolymph until it's this kind of fairly soft adult. And this took about an hour. They say it takes about an hour or two, and this is often done at night and times where they're protected. And if we see some more examples here's some more examples of cicadas emerging from their nymphal shells. And here's the empty shells that people see all around on surfaces. Now, once they come out and they've hardened up and they're ready to mate, they are going to produce sound, and that's what cicadas are famous for. So the males use these timbal organs to produce their calls, and this is basically a muscles hooked up to this kind of uh, um, almost like an accordion. It's this drum-like organ, and they vibrate these organs to create the really loud sounds. And different cicadas have different songs, of course. And in a few minutes, we're going to be playing some of them for you, and maybe you'll get to hear some live too as you go outside. But both sexes have ears to hear those sounds, and the males can actually turn those ears off, which makes sense because they don't want to deafen themselves with their really loud noises that they're producing. Most cicadas call during the day, and there are a few though are crepuscular, which is evening or dawn, or are nocturnal. But for the most part, they're going to be day calling insects, and can be deafening. So if you're up close to one of the record holders, it could be 120 decibels. Which here is that offender, the green grocer cicada of Australia, and I went to a website and found out what 120 decibels sounds like, and it's a chainsaw, a thunderclap, or a rock concert, all things that can cause hearing damage. And so these are definitely the loudest insects in the world. Now, in North Carolina, we have several species. In North America, north of Mexico, we have about 172 species in 18 genera. In North Carolina, we have 28 of those species in 6 genera, and the most commonly seen are going to be Neotibicin, Megatibicin, and then Magicicada, which is Magicicada is the subject of today's talk, the periodical cicadas. Now, what most people think of when they think of cicadas and what you guys see every year are the annual or the dog day cicadas. So these are usually members of the genera Neotibicin and Megatibicin. They're heftier cicadas. They're going to be a bit bigger than the ones we're seeing right now, usually over 1.5 inches. And these are going to typically be kind of camo colors, like green, brown, black, sometimes with dustings of wax on them. And these are going to emerge midsummer and fall. So we're not going to see these yet. We're going to have to wait to see these, but these are something that every year they come out. And so, again, a lot of people question, okay, well, why is it such a big deal this year with the cicadas? I hear them every year. That's because you're hearing the annual cicadas, not the periodical cicadas. And of course, these create the familiar cicada sounds of summer that we'll hear in a few minutes. Now, just some examples of some of these. A few species of Neotibicin. These used to be in the genus Tibicin, but that's actually now restricted to an old world group, and they had to name them the new Tibicin. And then Megatibicin, which is one of our largest cicadas. And again, these are big insects. When they buzz around, they're clunky. You can hear them kind of buzzing around. I've actually been hit by one in flight, and almost knocked me out. No, I'm fooling around. Didn't do that, but they're big insects. So keep an eye out eye out for them in the summer. But right now they're not going to be out yet. But what we are going to be talking about today are the periodical cicadas. So this periodical cicadas is just a term for any cicadas that mass emerge all at once in regular cycles. Here is a periodical cicada from Brood 6 that was here in North Carolina, I think in 2015. And in the US, all of these periodical cicadas are in the genus Magicicada. Now, there are a couple of cicadas in the world. Apparently, there's one in India that has a 4-year cycle, and there's a couple other species, but really the most phenomenal kind of emergence of these periodical cicadas is in the eastern US in this genus Magicicada. These are medium-sized, about 1.5 inches. They're a bit smaller than the annual cicadas. They're going to be black with orange markings, reddish or orange eyes, and these amber wings. Now, I should mention, I didn't put it in here, but there is actually a blue-eyed mutant that's out there. So if you see one of those, you're a lucky one because they're not very common. So I'd love to see some of those observations. We'll tell you later on how to make some of those observations. But the interesting thing about the periodical cicadas we have here is that they are either 13 or 17-year life cycles. which is really strange. First of all, it's a very long period of time between when they're born or when they hatch to when they emerge as adults. And it's a prime number. Both those are prime numbers. Very strange in nature to have this very kind of seems kind of a random cycle. And they're again, they're on these 13 to 17-year life cycle. And these are going to be spring active. So, of course, we're in the spring right now. This is when we're starting to see them emerge. They're going to be gone before the summer starts and before the annual cicadas come out and are active. And I should mention there's a lot of information online. So a lot of things you can go on this University of Connecticut site for cicadas. There's a couple other sites out there to learn a lot more information about them. But as far as periodical cicada species, there are 7 species total of periodical cicadas, and they actually come in 3 species groups: the Decula, the Cassini, and the Decim groups. And actually, each group, each cycle number, the differences, the 13 versus 17 year, actually have members of each of these species groups. So what's interesting is that each species group contains a common ancestor, regardless of whether there's 13 or 17-year cicadas. So for instance, our species that's emerging here has a 17-year form up north, where the 17-year cicadas are more common. And you can note the differences in how to identify them. So the Cassini, for instance, have basically no orange on their belly. They're a bit smaller than the Decim, which have a much more abundant orange, whereas Decula have a little bit of orange, but it's a narrow stripe, and they're much smaller species. So I would definitely suggest people post their records and get those identified to see what species we have coming out right now. It seems that most of them right now are the Decims that are coming out, which are fairly a little bit bigger and have much more orange on them. Now, we talk about these broods of periodical cicadas. Really, a brood is an emergence that happens in unison. So we expect them to all be on the same schedule. I will say that there are some stragglers, ones that will emerge from this brood next year, and early emergers, the things that may have emerged last year that were confused and didn't get the right message and just arrived early to the party. Now, if there are enough of those ones that are either late or early, this is how new broods begin. But basically, this is where they're timed, where they can regularly encounter others of their brood. Again, multiple species can be in that brood, but they're all going to emerge at the same time. Now, as far as 17-year broods, here in North Carolina, we actually have 5 of them: Brood 2, Brood 6, Brood 9, Brood 10, and Brood 14 that we can see. And in fact, if everybody's super excited right now, be prepared to be excited again next year. So in 2025, we expect Brood 14 to be emerging. Now, they're going to be a little bit more Western than this current brood. So be on lookout for that. I'm sure you're going to be hearing a lot about them then. And then as far as the 13-year broods, there was really only one that would be found in North Carolina, but it's a very large one. This is the Great Southern Brood, the brood we're seeing here, which is Brood 19. And again, here's a map of that. Now, I will say these maps are based on old data. You know, it's at least 13 years old. And so it's really important to make new records. So these are, you know, a little off, and we're hoping to expand the data with more observations. Now, we mentioned this double brood and how rare it is. And so there's been some confusion out there about this and maybe in the news, but really it's summarized best in that, you know, since these are in prime numbers, they don't really line up very often. And so you don't have 2 broods emerging in the same year very often. So last time a 13 and a 17-year brood like this year emerged was 2015. Then the last time an adjacent 13 and 17 year, those are far apart. Last time an overlapping or abutting 13 and 17 year broods emerged was 1998. Now, the one number people have been putting out is that it's been 200 years since the 2 broods have emerged. That means specifically brood 19 and brood 13 this year haven't seen each other since 1803. And the only place they overlap is actually in Illinois. So Illinois, around Illinois is where Brood 13 is. That's ironically a 17-year brood, even though it's called Brood 13. And our Brood 19 right now emerging here also overlaps in parts of Illinois or so. So we're not going to actually see the double emergence here, but in the US right now, there is a double emergence occurring. And interestingly enough, the first adult observed on iNaturalist was from Chapel Hill this year. So that was April 8th. Now it made me look bad because I said a lot of them were going to start coming out in May, and this is very early. But basically, actually, I didn't mention this before, but the cicadas know to emerge when the soil temperature reaches about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, because different soils occur and different temperatures and things like that occur in different areas, the soil will get up to that temperature in different places at different times. So this is why you get different emergence times. So maybe where this was located was warming up quicker, or it personally just got the signal a little earlier and wanted to come out early. Who knows? But we did see it wasn't yet fully hardened off, but it had emerged as an adult in Chapel Hill. And just to show you a few more pictures, here are some fuzzy photos, not to call out our emeritus professors, Steve Bambera and Jim Baker, but they started seeing them emerging in late April. We had somebody email me from Charlotte who had a mass emergence of them on April 25th. And Kelly got to see a beautiful one and took this beautiful photo of one in Holly Springs. And I was actually starting to see the Nympho exuvi, that's the technical term for this shell, in Cary on April 20th when we were walking around. I haven't yet seen the adults, but I'm definitely going to be walking around to look for some. And so they are out and about now. So it looks like end of April is starting to the activity is starting, and into the early May, they're going to be many of them out. They live for about a month and are mating the whole time and doing their business, laying eggs, whatnot. Okay, so real quickly, let's listen to some sounds. So let's start off with some periodical cicadas, the ones you're going to be hearing now. So here is trade decim, and hopefully your ears don't get blown out, but here's what they sound like. Okay, and then we can hear different species of Magicicada, the periodical Tridecula. And you can hear it sounds very different. It's a clicking more than anything. And then, of course, because they're going to be emerging together, you may hear them all together. So you hear the different. These are all the clickings, but you'll hear the other species in there as well. Actually, it's probably playing both at the same time, artificially making it a party. So so this may be what you're in store for. I don't know if it's good or not, but this is what they're doing out there. And let's compare that to some of the annual cicadas. So these are they're going to be the bigger ones. They're going to emerge in the summer. And so these are going to be the more typical sounds of summer that you think of, like this. So maybe they don't sound that different to you. Not sure, but this is what I think of when I think of summer sounds in North Carolina. So these very distinct calls. And then we've got another one species here, which is kind of a droning one. It's kind of, you get that really, again, this really reminds me of summer, of course, and all those loud noises. All right. All right, so I'm going to go back here and I think Kelly, time to turn it over to you.
Yeah, my turn. Thanks for that introduction, Matt. I don't get the privilege of sharing the sounds with y'all, but we can talk about all the natural enemies that eat cicadas, because obviously we have this huge emergence, this huge influx of all of these insects in the environment. So what actually eats them? The answer is a lot of things. There are some specialists out there, you know, things that can handle their size. There are also a lot of generalists. So fish, birds, even praying mantises, bats, things like that. I'll mention a parasite and then a fungus as well. But one of the most important specialists, next slide. See, we did not rehearse our slide transitions, but one of the coolest ones is a specialist called the Eastern Cicada Killer Wasp. These are massive wasps. You've probably seen them around and maybe ran for your life, but they're specialists. They only hunt cicadas. And you can see a female there taking down a cicada, even though the cicada is probably at least twice her weight. She takes her down, girl power, and then she lays eggs on the cicada. She buries them in the soil. If she's laying a male egg, that egg will only get one cicada. If it's a female, they will actually get two or even three cicadas. That egg is laid at the base of that middle leg of the cicada, and then the wasp larva emerges and then consumes the entire cicada in as little as 4 days. So really, really impressive. And you know, a very big, very cool wasp. We also have a generalist wasp, the European hornet. Good. Yeah, right there. Not the famous Asian giant hornet that you've heard about in the news, but probably the most commonly confused one with that species. And I'm sure Matt and I both get a lot of pictures of people thinking that the European hornet is that Asian giant hornet. But this is a generalist predator that will consume cicadas. You can see the damage that was done on that cicada on the right there. Another generalist predator, which actually causes a lot of hype in social media, are copperheads. So this has become very sensationalized. You'll see a lot of posts, probably everyone like saying there's huge copperhead population booms whenever the cicadas emerge. Basically, a lot of things are blown out of proportion with this. So let's blow things back into proportion a little bit. The reality is, yes, copperheads do eat cicadas. Look at all of those photos there. Next slide, Matt. There's a really good picture. And the fact that snakes climb trees, I just absolutely hate. But you can see a copperhead right there. I'm about to eat a cicada. And you'll also notice that it's going after a newly emerged cicada. So this is before the exoskeleton hardens, and that's really when they prefer to eat them. So are, you know, cicadas a significant portion of their diet? There was a study that looked at the gut contents of copperheads, and turns out, yes, cicadas are a big proportion of their diet, but all the herpetologists out there really say this isn't something to be alarmed about. It's not like copperheads are going to spontaneously multiply because there's periodical cicadas out there. They may gather around when there's an emergence. You know, if there's a lot of cicadas at the base of a tree, you might see snakes there, because they do like those newly emerged ones. Just keep in mind that it's temporary. You know, the cicadas aren't going to be out all summer. So really just exercise the same snake caution that you would any other time. Don't put your hands where you can't see. Wear shoes at night, or wear shoes when you're outside, appropriate shoes. Use a flashlight at night. And my favorite one is just don't harass snakes. We just don't need to do that in general. Next slide. This is a cool insect that Matt actually shared with me. There is a parasitic caterpillar in Asia. We do have a member of the same family here in the US, but it does not parasitize cicadas. It parasitizes plant hoppers, I believe. And then another really cool story. This is actually a study done by Matt Casson out of West Virginia University. He's looking at this fungal disease that impacts periodical cicadas. Basically, it's an STD of bugs. They contract this fungus and then they spread it when they mate with other females. And sorry, plug your ears, guys, their genitalia actually fall off when they get infected with this fungus. And then some of the males will really try to get a mate, and not just mate with other females, but they will actually imitate the wing flicking that female cicadas do. And then a male will think it's a female and come in, try to mate with the male, and then get infected that way as well. So pretty cool story. I encourage you to read that entire article if that sounds interesting to you. This huge influx, which we just mentioned, of cicadas in the environment can actually be considered beneficial. Obviously we have, these massive amounts of insects that are being consumed by organisms, but they also may help the environment as they decompose on the forest floor. We've seen increases in microbial biomass and in nitrogen. There's also been suggestions that all of those holes that they make when they emerge from the soil help aerate the soil. So there's a few short-term benefits that can be seen from cicadas as well. But the big question everyone has is, how will this impact me? A lot of people get really concerned because dogs tend to like to eat cicadas. Let me assure you, they don't bite, they don't sting, they're not poisonous or toxic. You could eat them, which we'll talk about here in a second. Generally speaking, dogs probably like to eat them because I assume they're fun to capture, but they also do have a nutty taste, or so I'm told. The noise itself will probably be considered annoying to some, especially if you're in an area where there's just that wall of sound. But if you are in one of those areas, just keep in mind that this is a temporary occurrence. Probably the biggest thing that I get asked working on forest health problems is, what is this going to do to our trees? And the adults and obviously the nymphs as well feed on trees, but that doesn't really damage them. It's really the egg laying that might cause flagging on some trees. You can see in that image on the right there, some of the tips of the branches are dead, and that's because cicadas use a saw-like ovipositor to deposit their eggs, which you saw pictures of earlier, and that can cause dieback or even branch breakage from where that occurs to the tip of the branch. So you can see it if there's a really large infestation, it may cover a tree, but really it's not going to impact the health of the tree long term. You might even see a flush of new growth on that tree the following year. And really it's the biggest problem when the trees are young, newly planted, not established, maybe some younger crops. There were reports last time these emerged that they impacted blueberry crops. So just something to keep in mind. I think we've got more pictures on the next slide. There you go. So you can see what some of that flagging can look like on some of the trees or some of the woody shrubs that might be around you. But if you do have some trees that you really want to protect, if you're concerned about their aesthetics, or they are new planting that you just really want to protect, probably the best thing to do is cover them with a fine netting. So you can see in this picture here is quite the undertaking for a relatively small tree, and you've got to secure the net around the base of where it comes underneath the canopy, just so that cicadas can't crawl up. But that's really the best thing you can do. If you're about to plant a tree, you can consider waiting to plant them until the fall, just so you don't have a brand new planting that gets a whole bunch of oviposition in the branches and things like that. Pesticides aren't really recommended. They're not the most effective, and once again, doesn't cause long-term health impacts to the tree, so really not worth it. Now, some of the cooler parts of cicadas, historically, they've been really important in a lot of Native American groups. They're really important as a food source for a lot of people around the world. In fact, us in the US and Europe, 80% of the world consumes insects. We're really the minority, so they know where it's out. Maybe we should follow their lead a little bit. Aristotle even found them delicious. The reports are that they have a nutty-like flavor, but again, I'm saying the reports because I have not done it myself. Maybe that makes me a bad entomologist. But if it does interest you, there are tons of recipes online. You can, it's highly recommended to eat those teneroles or those newly emerged cicadas before the exoskeletons harden. The texture has been likened to a peeled shrimp. It's also recommended to treat them like you would other crustaceans. So if you're going to harvest them, put them in the fridge or cook them immediately. Freezing them is not recommended because apparently it changes the texture of them. Immensely, which just sounds disgusting to me. But again, if you're still intrigued, there's some recipes here on the next slide. Everything from savory tacos to a lot of sweet chocolate chip trillers out there. There's a whole recipe book. I guarantee you just search for periodical cicada recipes and you will find something that is up your alley.
So,
But if
Kelly,
eating them,
should
you
we
what?
give everyone a moment to screenshot this so they can have it
Yeah,
in
that's
their
a
recipe
a good
book?
point. And report back. I mean, I don't see reviews on this. I'd really like to know what people are saying. Yeah, so if eating them isn't up your alley, then I would encourage you to get involved another way, and that's by reporting your sightings. Put some observations in some apps. We don't want Matt to be embarrassed again in 13 years with predicting a wrong emergence time. So this will really help us know when they're emerging, where they're emerging, and just generally add to the greater data set that we have as entomologists. So probably one of the most popular apps that are used out there for not just cicadas, but a lot of insects and even a lot of organisms, plants, fungi, etc., is iNaturalist. So really, really cool app. You can put your location, upload photos. People come in and comment and confirm identifications. Highly, highly recommend. This is really something that you can get your kids involved with too, and get them outside on these beautiful days that we have ahead of us. There's also a specific app to just cicadas. It's called Cicada Safari. This is one where a lot of data is pulled from as well. So you can download this on your smartphone. And I've already looked at some of the reports. There's a lot of reports all around the Raleigh area. So again, highly suggest that you get involved with the research and inputting data into the growing data set that we have of periodical cicadas. Now, lastly, there may be issues where you are really concerned about your trees. So I wanted to share some resources, not just for cicadas, but for forests and tree health in general. Your county agents, through your cooperative extension service, we have county agents in every single county across the state. That website there can bring you to where you can find the county agent near you. And then if you have forest trees where they may be impacted by cicadas or something else, contact your local county ranger or county office with the North Carolina Forest Service. And there's the website where you can find them. Again, Google is your friend if that is a very long website address for you to jot down. But generally speaking, this is a really cool phenomenon. It's really exciting to be an entomologist and be a part of it. It's really exciting to not be an entomologist and be a part of it. I get so many texts from friends. I know Matt does too. All the other entomologists who may be watching probably get a lot of questions and pictures from their friends and family. So just enjoy it. Remember that it's temporary. They're only going to be out for, 6 weeks or so, Matt. They're just going to be out here. They're going to be loud, trying to find a mate, lay eggs, and then die. And we won't see their offspring for another 13 years. And I realize my daughter will be 22 when that happens, which blows my mind. So, and with that, Matt or I will take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, my daughter's 24 and 28, almost 30 years old.
It's brutal to do the math.
Well, we'll
We
have them
won't
again
talk
next
about
year.
how old we'll be.
Yeah. What's that?
Let's not talk about how old the three of us will be.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, pass.
Right there. Kelly, Matt, thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. This is a fun topic.
So fun. I'll encourage all of our viewers to drop their appreciations for you down in the chat, which for Lunchtime Discovery Series presentations, the chat over on YouTube has been blowing up with people drop it. Like there's enough, if all of these people are dropping their sightings of cicadas into iNaturalist or Cicada Safari, then you've got dozens of points now just from around North Carolina, because
Awesome.
there's been a great conversation.
We hope they do. Yeah, definitely put those sightings in there because again, I was also confused. When I don't know, I think it was the last time this brood came out, I was living in Raleigh and I didn't see them anywhere. And I was living in the woods kind of, and I heard from everybody that you wouldn't be able to see them here. You'd have to go out a little west to Chapel Hill or Durham, and I was like, okay, well, and all the records kind of pointed to that, and that's what I've been telling everybody. And of course, they not only make me look bad by emerging earlier this year, of course, who knows, things are getting warmer, but they're also emerging in all these other places, like in Raleigh. So maybe it's better for me to have said that and have people be surprised than to say, oh, you're going to get them, and people be like, oh, why didn't they come here? So I'm gonna go with that right now.
Playing it safe.
Mhm.
Lead with a little suspense. Well, can I toss some questions y'all's way?
Please.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the first ones that came in, which I think is a good one, is what's the difference between a cicada and a katydid?
Mm. That's a great question. And actually, I was going to mention, when I was younger, and it's kind of dropped off a bit, everybody would call them locusts, and it was like this really interesting kind of thing. Well, Kelly, do you want to answer it?
Yeah, I'll let the taxonomist do it, but
Okay.
yeah, I was gonna mention that locusts are a common misnomer for cicadas, but yeah,
Yeah, and
that's good.
they both make a lot of sounds. I think that's why maybe they're confused. But yeah, so katydids and locusts are orthopterans, which means they are grasshoppers, crickets, katydids are all close relatives. They have chewing mouth parts. They do make sounds, a lot of them, but they have chewing mouth parts, so they're not technically a true bug like the true cicadas are. So cicadas are more, like I said, closer related to aphids and those sucking insects that suck plant juices or things like that. And then the katydids and locusts are actually grasshoppers and things that chew on plants. But again, they're both singing insects, and in fact, a lot of people kind of study them together because of these singing behaviors.
Okay, fascinating stuff. There you go. Let's see here. It's hard to find the questions because there's so many observations where everybody's seeing them. Like people are seeing them on sidewalks in Cary. I mean, there's
Uh,
a lot apparently in
you
Cary.
need to figure out. You need to tell me what the most eastern one is, because it'll make me. I don't know if it'll make me feel bad or better, but I want to hear what the most eastern one is. Not that you have to calculate each one of those, Chris, but
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna have to get in here in Google Maps to find some of these cities just to know where they are. Uh, the chat, let me know if you're east of at least of Cary. I know. Jump in the chat or let me know. Okay, let's see here. Why does the annual cicada pitch get louder and quieter instead of staying the same volume the whole time? There's a lot of difference between the various species and between the annual and the periodical cicadas.
but Kelly's going to answer this one.
Am I?
Hopefully.
I don't know why, but what I was going to say is that different species have different songs and it's species specific. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I think one of our four species that's emerging right now is identified in the last 20 years because someone identified there was a different song being sung and it was unrecognizable and didn't match the other species. And that's when we discovered that there was a fourth 13-year cicada that was emerging. So it's all species specific. I don't know if there's anything other than just the massive amounts of them. I don't know if you want to piggyback on that, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I was going to look up. So the only all the species groups are represented only by one species, except for that decim, I think. And I think the tradecim and then neotradecim. The neo one must be the one you're talking about, because I didn't actually look up why it was a new species. But that is funny because there are a lot of organisms where the calls are different, but superficially you wouldn't be able to tell between them. And so functionally they're very different because they're not going to mate, they're not going to mix when they're mating. And so, like Kelly said, yeah, they're just specific calls, and I'm not sure exactly why the calls are structured different ways, but everything kind of has to stand out so that when you're in a big chorus, you don't go to the wrong, on the wrong date kind of thing.
Right. All right, very cool. Some people are also interested in iNaturalist and Cicada Safari, and they're curious if they should prioritize one over the other, or which should they? Should we upload observations to both platforms if we can? What do you think about that?
Hmm. I would say maybe pick one because they usually aggregate them. So sites that are using, they're going to go to all these sites to aggregate those data. I would say, iNaturalist is, I would say support the Cicada Safari maybe. Also, but iNaturalist is good in general, and if you start to kind of get into this, you're going to start to use it more anyway. And I use it a lot, not a lot, but I go on there, I help ID, and I also contribute photos. And it's not just cicadas, so it's hard to say, but I definitely think Cicada Safari should get some support, maybe. So I don't think it hurts to upload both the same observation to both. They're probably going to hopefully be able to tell the different, that they're the same observations. But Kelly, do you have an opinion on that, or?
Yeah, no, I think you did a good job explaining between them. iNaturalist has a lot more support, so probably if there's a bug, it'll be updated pretty quickly. But yeah, if you're doing this with your kids, they get really into it, then that's a good platform to just keep doing it on. Or while you're out there hunting cicadas, you see something else like a flower. It also has some really good image recognition as far as guessing what species it is, which can help in identification as well. So I've used it for some of my own research papers. Really, really good tool that benefits scientists.
Okay, excellent stuff. I know we're just coming off of the City Nature Challenge too, which is a big nationwide iNaturalist challenge. So people might already be fairly familiar with it. Okay, so many questions coming in. What about preferences for types of trees? Do periodical cicadas hang out on particular species?
Kelly's in the forestry department.
I should know the answer to this.
No.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think they're definitely generalists. They'll feed on a lot of different things, and they do feed a little bit when they're adult. But I think it's well, they're not really. I don't think they're gonna feed on conifers like pines and things like that. But they
Yeah.
may lay their eggs in there too. I don't know if they're around. They may just use that. But I think it's mostly hardwoods, and it's probably gonna be the common things that are around. Like I just heard sweet gum, oaks, maples, probably kind of. But again, they'll be going to be laying their eggs and probably feeding in the blueberries and grapes and other kind of. They're fairly generalist. They're not kind of super picky. But it's not or no herbaceous plants like they're not going to be feeding on kind of flowers or those things. It's going to be trees, and I think that's also because they need that consistency in the roots. So when they're developing, they need that plant to be there for 13 years at least, if not obviously longer. So yeah.
Cool stuff. All right, let's see. When the nymphs first emerge from underground, what senses are they using to navigate to objects like trees and plants to shed, or are they using visual cues or smell or something else?
Hmm. Yeah, I doubt they're. I have a feeling that they're just crawling up the nearest thing that they hit. Because you can see them crawling on buildings. I had one on my porch. You'll have them on trees. So it's not like they say, "Oh, we got to get up on a tree." They're kind of just trying to find. I think they kind of. I don't know how good their eyesight is. The other thing to think about is that the adult is really almost developed in that skin, and so it may not even see as well as it would normally because it's got a skin around it kind of thing because it's just about to come out. So they're basically kind of ambling up somewhere to emerge. So I don't think, and their antennae are fairly small. I think they just kind of bump into something and crawl up it. So maybe don't stand anywhere too long, and
Yeah, I agree with that. Like that's common in insects too, to have a general inclination to climb upwards. And like Matt was saying, like when they're about to shed their exoskeleton, that last nymphal exoskeleton actually separates from the adult inside. So there is a separation there, and their vision is probably terrible.
Oh, wow. So they're just driving a little exuvia skeleton around until they can
Yeah.
pop the hatch and
they're
bust
they're
out.
they're packed
Basically.
in there. Yeah, they're packed in there like leather pants or whatever. I don't know. It's like they're just like they're in there and they're waiting to bust out basically. Because obviously too, the adults are much bigger than the skin that they're on, so they're really shoved in there.
The same folks that asked that question, which are the museum's teacher education folks, actually, also noticed anecdotally that the ones that are coming up in their neighbor's yard, which is a lot of grass and not very many trees, seem to turn to navigate across the road and into their yard.
Interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder, they might be able to see shadows and things like that. So if it's really bright, they might be going toward darker areas because that signifies some kind of structure or something. It's hard, they may not be able to see, kind of make out pictures, but they may be able to say, okay, this is a bright yard. This is not where I want to be. I want to get to somewhere quickly and because they're not very well protected when they're soft and slow and things can just nab them. So I think, yeah. Which also makes you think that you should all probably plant trees everywhere. So,
There you go. Trees are great. I'm curious. Something that I did not know about them, brand new fact to me today, was the three eyes on the top of their head. So they've got the two giant big red eyes, and then three more. Are these just sort of like light sensing organs, less eyes, like we think of them? What are those little three things for?
Yeah, those are called ocelli. But yeah, light sensing organs, they're very simple eyes, as opposed to the compound eyes that are used for more visual cues and sight. Some insects use their ocelli to, sense where it's light, where it's dark, but also how long day length is, for those circadian rhythm cues and when to, do certain activities related to, their life cycle.
yeah, and it was funny. So I was, and a lot of insects have them. In fact, honeybees have those three ocelli. They're just very tiny they're not tiny, but they're, you don't really look at it up close. And cicadas being big, I definitely welcome people to encourage people to look at them that closely. But that is actually the funny thing. I was trying to find out the technical way to identify a cicada because we all know what cicadas look like. But if you were to write a key or tell somebody how to tell what a cicada was, apparently that is the only thing that's unique about them is that they have these three ocelli and almost all other hemiptera either have two or none. And so the three is just super weird. And that just kind of blew my mind because it's like, I know what a cicada looks like, but why do I know what a cicada looks like? Or how do I tell somebody that's never seen a cicada what a cicada looks like if you have some other big kind of bug? Now, of course, the size is pretty big. They're definitely by far the biggest of their group of bugs, like the aphids and the hoppers and things like that. Although there's some very big fulgurids and lanternflies and things like that. So, yeah, it's just I had to look that up.
Do we know how many, like a total number of cicadas will be emerging, either in North Carolina or across the brood or the double brood event? Like, how many bugs are we talking about?
I yeah, I don't know the actual data. Kelly, did
Okay.
you read anything
Es
about it?
Estimates have varied wildly from millions to I've even seen trillions. Um, I don't know if we know. One of the things that Matt and I were talking about when we were working on this presentation is how, 13 years ago, what tools did we have to record all of this? And now everyone has, the smartphone. Granted, smartphones were around back then, but more people have them and more people use them with much more ease. There's apps that are easier to use. So it's really going to be cool to see how much our data improves, especially as citizen scientists add records to these apps.
And I will say, one thing that I didn't actually mention or we didn't mention was that one problem is that these things are underground for a long period of time. Over those 13 years, a lot of development can happen. A lot of, a house can be put over where these cicadas are, and they're going to be emerging to kind of a concrete slab or a parking lot or something like that. So there's definitely some issues. There's different, there's going to be, we don't know how much they're going to spread around from these areas or how much these broods grow. At least I don't. But there is shrinkage of them because there's if you've developed and you now have these places where they can't come up. Um, but as far as numbers, yeah, I could say maybe billions, maybe, but that's a good safe bet because there's probably lots and lots of them out there. I mean, maybe somebody needs to go out and count in their yard, and we'll try and extrapolate how many they have in their yard. But yeah.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Okay, viewer wants to know what their claws are used for underground. Once they attach to a root, do they move around or change routes over the course of their lifetime underground?
Yeah, I've actually I wanted to look that up because They do create a little chamber, kind of like a mud chamber around so they kind of live in this little home on that root or whatever. I have a feeling they don't move roots very often. I think they kind of stay put. They're kind of very happy where they are. So I guess they probably stay mostly in one place for a long time. And of course, they're molting too. So they go through a number of molts. So from that little tiny baby one to what we see when they're crawling out of the ground, it's obviously huge, orders of magnitude in size. So they are developing their shedding, and they do kind of have this cavity they live in on near a root. But I have a feeling I'd have to look that up, whether they actually move around to other roots. But those claws and those front legs are, yeah, they may look like kind of like raptorial legs that like praying mantises have that would capture things, but really they're more for digging. So they're using those to dig around.
Yeah, I'll second that. And it's also one of the cool things when you find one of those shed exuvia, how you can just like put it on your shirt. Kids tend to love it and just walk around with the shed skins on them. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all done that, which is funny, probably.
Rite of
Chris, have you done
passage.
that? Chris, have you done it?
Oh, everyone I find.
Yeah,
I just collect them
covered
while I'm
in
out.
them.
You'll fit right in with us.
And you just go lay among the cicadas, and you're like camouflage now. You know.
I just put on a dark green shirt and just go lay on the ground by a tree and wait for them.
Mhm.
At that, well, I also know that I have copperheads in my neighborhood, so maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not.
We'll play it safe. We'll play it safe. Okay, let's see. How do we know if we see one of the zombie diseased ones with the fungus?
So if you get up close and look underneath, you'll see a white patch. And if it's a male, it'll be missing its genitalia. The females actually don't lose their genitalia, I think, unless a male mates with her, and then it kind of breaks off and stays attached to him. But you'll see that white fungal patch on the underside near the tip of their abdomen.
So what should be black or black and orange is going to be white growth.
Exactly.
Okay. Good to look for.
And actually, Matt Casson is looking for specimens. So I think I don't know how to share a link or whatever, but if you look up well, Massospora, it's gonna be difficult, is the fungus. But Casson, Kasson, if you look up him, he's actually doing a project with community science project where he's having people submit cicadas that are affected so that they can do a big study on them. So I encourage you to look up some of that stuff, and you may be able to contribute to science.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Okay. This will be the last one just because it's an interesting one. Zenitha wants to know if carnivorous plants eat periodical cicadas.
Ooh, that's a very, very interesting question. I've never thought about that.
What's the overlap
Yeah, so
between?
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. So, typically the carnivorous plants aren't as commonly found where these cicadas would be found, but I bet we do have areas where there are pitcher plants. And I guess maybe an unlucky cicada has probably once out of the trillions or whatever, maybe fallen in a pitcher plant, and that pitcher plant was super happy for a long time. I don't know.
Well,
Kelly, do
you
you have
showed us some examples of tropical cicadas too, and I feel like in the tropics there's even greater diversity of carnivorous plants with bigger pitchers and bigger traps, pitfall
I
traps and stuff like that.
like
So,
I doubt that a Venus flytrap has ever caught a cicada because they're very large. Even the ones that we do have some smaller species here in the state that are smaller than even the periodicals, like the hieroglyphic cicada and a few. They're not super common, but I still think they're too big for a Venus flytrap to handle. But I think with all the millions of cicadas out there everywhere, and some of those carnivorous plants, I think there's a non-zero chance that a pitcher plant or something has eaten a cicada.
the way that they just buzz around and run into you, Matt, surely they have slam dunked into a pitcher plant.
That's true. And I might guess a safer bet. I only eat a few of them that come to me. No, but I have recipes now, I guess. So
I'll
There
send
you
you the
go.
book, Matt.
thank you, thank you. We're gonna have to eat them together then, though.
It's a plan.
photograph it and put it on the internet for us when you do.
We will totally.
rely on I think most of us are going to rely on your observations.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Now we're in for
Don't
it.
hold your breath, guys.
Yeah. No, but you know, feel free to do it if you're into it. And
Sounds
report to
great.
us. Report back to everybody else. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let us know. Let the Lunchtime Discovery community know what you've got going on when it comes to cicadas. And folks, we'll be looking out for your cicada observations over the next several weeks, wherever you might happen to be. If you see them, jump on Naturalist Cicada Safari. I don't know, you might even be able to email Matt or Kelly your observations just for fun. They can just delete it if they don't need it. That's fine.
Let's just say I would love to see some of the kind of funky ones. So if you got any strange behavior, if you've got the blue-eyed ones, if you got some ones with fungus or whatnot, or something getting eaten, you know, something interesting eating one, yeah, send them our way because or post them on those sites. I'm sure I'll see them at some point. But yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Well, Dr. Bertone, Dr. Oten, thanks for being with us today. Really appreciate your knowledge and insights. Everybody is well prepared now for this event. Viewers, thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate you being with us. We'll be here again next Wednesday at noon with another presentation. Head to eenorthcarolina.org. That's the website for the Office of Environmental Education. In order to get more details about upcoming programs, you can also sign up for their email newsletter. That way you can get the link in your inbox and come and join us. And if you happen to be taken in today's presentation from the Daily Planet Theater inside the Museum of Natural Sciences, thanks for sticking around and watching. Hope you learned something fun. We'll be back here again next Wednesday, of course. Great programs coming up this month, so don't miss out. And everybody, we'll see you again next week. Bye, folks.